We're very happy to welcome Pat Venderly. We saw him already this morning. He is the new College Mennonite Church Board Chair. Having just completed my first year as a member of the board, I can attest that Pat has really been thrown in at the deep end. As chair-elect, he has worked tirelessly and with great dedication to learn the ins and outs of College Mennonite Church life. If I know one thing about Pat for sure, it is that he truly loves CMC. I asked him how I might introduce him, and he gave me an introduction that was used at MEDA a few years ago. The intro was titled Patrick Venderly, a career in professional sports and never played for a team. Pat grew up near Leo in rural northern Indiana in a working class Mennonite family. His father was in the construction trades. He attended Goshen College as a first-generation college student. After graduate school, Pat started his career in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He was employed in positions at U.S. Volleyball and U.S. Soccer Federation, both within the United States Olympic Committee. He worked at the international level, first in sports development programming, then in the commercial sector. In 1997, at the age of 33, Pat founded TGI Systems with the help of a large format printer serving the National Hockey League, the National Basketball Association, Major League Baseball, and international soccer. In 2019, the company accepted privacy equity and rebranded to TGI Sport, a tech-led global sports media company to fuel that growth and vision. In his 37-year career, Pat has traveled and worked in more than 50 countries. He and his wife, Ann, reside in Goshen, and they have 2 adult children. Pat has titled his presentation, My Journey from Rural Indiana to a Cross-Cultural Business Adventure in a Sporting World. I think we'll learn a lot. Welcome.
Morning. Yeah, it's working. Love technology. A few ground rules, maybe just to get started. They talked about who the sojourners are and who the sojourners are not. How many people out there actually know me or knew of me before I came? Wow. How many people were my professors? Len, John, Don, Del. And I know if you think I give a good speech today, it's all because of Wilbur. Or maybe the written word, maybe it was the creative writing class. I'm pretty informal. So if you like don't understand something, my mind, I have like what I call a adult attention deficit. Like my mind just goes everywhere. So just raise your hand, say, whoa, slow down, whatever. So what I thought I would do is kind of tell a story through some pictures so that you got to know a little bit more about me, where I came from, how I got here, where Ann and I have lived. And Ann is in the audience today. You know, she's the academic dean at Goshen College. So she's my fact checker, make sure that this information is accurate. So this is my family. I was born in 1963 and attended the North Leo Mennonite Church. Well, it really wasn't the North Leo Mennonite Church. It was the Leo Mennonite Church. And then in 1968, a bunch of families left that church, built a beautiful church, and we had about 225 people attending there. So you probably, those of you that have been here a long time, recognize my brother Doug there, who is 10 years older than I am, and my sister Renee. They both went here. And so I kind of followed along in their footsteps, coming to Goshen College. And I don't remember this, But somebody told me in second grade Sunday school, I was arguing with my teacher that Jesus had to be a Mennonite. He just had to be. I didn't know why, but he just had to be. So that I know this talk was about faith formation, and I thought that little tidbit was kind of important. Um, at that time, I probably had no idea what it was to be a Mennonite, an Anabaptist, or Hebrew or Israelite, anything. So this is my father. He was not a Mennonite. He went to Leo High School. His best friend was my mother's brother, and they were basketball players. And so he got to know my mom that way and got into the church that way and got into the construction trades that way because my grandfather was one other thing I should insert. So my mother was a letterman, and I believe Irvin, your mother, was a letterman. So my mother and Irvin are first cousins. It's just another probably important thing here. So I didn't know everybody from Archibald, but I was Northeastern Indiana. Anyway, so my mom and dad got married in 1950, but the one thing that sticks in my mind is my grandfather, my mother's father, said that my dad had to join the church before he could marry his daughter. So my dad became an Anabaptist and a Mennonite. The other thing about my father was he loved sports. That's probably where I got. And my dad was a high school basketball official. So as a child, I traveled the entire state of Indiana with my father and my uncle, my mother's brother, because they were officials together. And now this is high school football. This is high school basketball, high school baseball. And occasionally I came up and they did Goshen College. And so that was probably my first experience in the basement of the Union as a kid about this big. And the ironic thing I remember, there's two things that I remember in that, doing that. I love to come here to Goshen College and watch a basketball game. You know why? They had an extra digit on the scoreboard. So that meant they might score 100 points. Nobody in high school ever saw a third digit on a high school scoreboard. So when I came into that Union, that was big time. The other thing I'll say is I met Roman Gingrich that way through my father and my uncle, and the officials had to get dressed in Roman's office downstairs. And then after the game, guess who locker room they had to go shower in? The Goshen. That was not always easy. The away team was in the women's locker room upstairs, and the men were in the lower, but the officials had to go shower with the Goshen team. That was pretty a solemn experience at times. Depends on who won. My father was a Chicago White Sox fan, so we traveled from Fort Wayne, where I grew up, Leo, Indiana, to Chicago to watch baseball games. And so I was very familiar with big cities, so forth and so on. This is my mother. You've seen her around here. She's 94. I thought she would be here today, but she lives in Waterford, and then she spends her summer or winters in Sarasota. But my mother went back to work when I was probably in first or second grade as a paraprofessional at the high school. And so she also ended up becoming the athletic director's secretary, which means on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, she was selling tickets. And being that my sister was 9 years older and my brother was 10 years older and they were at Goshen College, guess where I went? I either went with my dad or I went with my mom working in sports. So now you understand where I'm headed. Play, I put this up here next. This was very important to me as a child. High school basketball on the left, baseball, of course, and always fishing with my father, whether that was at Little Eden or up in Michigan or whatever. So play was always very important to me. North Leo Mennonite Church. So I tried to play as many sports as possible growing up, besides going to school and getting a good education down in Leo. Typical torchbearer. You remember that? MYF. But to be honest, like basketball was very important in my life. And on the 4th of January, 1979, I was a sophomore and I was playing high school basketball, and it was really important to me. And this is a really bad picture, but that's an x-ray. So I broke my right leg when I was 15 years old, and maybe there's a couple of orthopods in the room, I don't know. My wife would know this. The distal epiphyseal disc broke, which is the growth plates in your tibia and your fibula. And so I missed, what was it, 9 weeks of school. I was on crutches for 14 weeks and I was doing nothing. Believe it or not, that changed my life. What was important in life. And it was while I was on crutches that I accepted Christ and I was baptized. June just gave me the signal that you can't hear me. Is that better? Put this right here. Life-changing experience at the age of 15. I continued to play sports, and I came to Goshen College and played sports. So it's not like it ended, but it actually changed the way I think. High school to Goshen College. It's not that far, right? Hour and 15 minutes. The three things I listed there from 1981 to 1985, besides meeting Ann when we were freshmen, and the aside after, what class was it? Was it calculus? Merritt Gardner. And I came out of high school thinking, oh, I know sciences, I know maths, whatever. And I did okay, but it wasn't as good as what I thought I would be. But I survived here at Goshen College. The three, besides meeting Ann my freshman year, the three things I put up there was SST. In the winter of 1985, I went to Baylis, and Bud and Phyllis Woolman were my supervisors. I came back the fall of my 5th year to student teach. So I thought I wanted to be a teacher because I majored in education, right, John Smith? I know he's in the room. And my major was physical education. So Sarge was a big impact on me, Ruth Gundon, John Ingle. I spent a lot of time in the Union. So I student taught in the fall up at Northridge in 1985 while Ann went off to graduate school to get a master's in physical therapy in Indianapolis. But in between that SST experience, that cross-cultural experience, and my student teaching experience, I also listed down there AIA, which is Athletes in Action. Has anybody heard of Athletes in Action? A little bit of Campus Crusade. So you basically go abroad, play sports, witness, try to draw people to Christ. I'll get to that. Great 4.5 years here at Goshen College. Liberal arts education, 100%. I endorse that. Coming back to this play thing. And so what I learned by being a physical education major, hopefully, John, you're smiling when I get this. The health triangle. It's about your physical, your mental, and your social well-being. This resonated with me as somebody that loved to play and wanted to teach and or coach. And so I can get into the health of your body, your emotional well-being, and your social, which is your relationship with others, your sense of belonging, your ability to interact effectively. I'm going to try and move this out of the way here so I can see. When I wrote this for this presentation, what I thought was ironic, in my role right now with you all for the College Mennonite, is that third one, the social, the relationships with others, your sense of belonging, and our ability to interact effectively with others. Still right there here today, even though I'm not out there with gym shoes on playing sports or throwing a ball. So in PE, we often involves team sports, teamwork, and I wrote the acronym TEAM. Anybody know what TEAM stands for? Have you heard this? Together, everyone achieves more. That's something in the sports world we talk about often. And so you get teamwork, you get cooperation, and you learn leadership skills in that space. So I just thought that was one of the things that I learned as a physical education major here that still sticks with me today. Oops. Athletes in Action. So the summer of 1985, I decided to do this right after SST. And so I went with a group of guys from several small liberal arts colleges that were baseball players, NAIA or D3. And we went to Czechoslovakia, to Sweden, Germany, France, I learned what friendship evangelism was, and I kind of built upon what I knew what servant leadership was. Although that's probably before servant leadership was a big word in our church. It was interesting when I think Ann was with me because their headquarters were in Colorado Springs, and I believe we went out there for spring break. And I just thought I would stop in their office and say, hey, I'm going to Europe. I'm a baseball player. And what else do I need to know? And this man walked up to me. I don't even think he was really with Athletes in Action. I think he was with Campus Crusade for Christ. And he said, how many lives have you brought to God? Well, I was just, a senior at Goshen College that just wanted to play baseball. And I looked at him and I said, wow, sorry, I don't know how many people my life has affected in my 20 years that I've been on this earth. And I just sort of like went away, and I went back and I told Ann, I'm like, I think I got to get my Bible out and put notches in it about how many people I'm going to lead to Christ. So I had a really good experience that summer, but I learned about the 4 spiritual laws, which you probably all or everybody knows. And that was just ingrained in our head. And I remember having conversations with my teammates saying like, how can we be here today and try to lead these people to Christ and be gone tomorrow? And they have no idea who I am or how I live my life. So just that point in 1985 in my life. Sorry, Ann, I don't want to get your permission for that picture. 17th of August, 1986, we were married in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And so 39 years, next year's 40. Ann was already in graduate school in Indianapolis, Indiana, a 2.5-year program. And I really didn't know what God had in store for me in my life. I wanted to do something, but I got a teaching assistantship at Indiana University in the School of Health, Physical Education, and Recreation. And I thought I'd get into higher education, clinical exercise physiology, using exercise to help treat diseases. After about 1 year of working with a diseased population and being around all these medical students, I'm like, oh, wow, this is depressing. I want to get back into sports. So I switched over to sports administration and kind of created my own little curriculum, taking finally my first class ever in business at the IU School of Business. I took accounting, business law, and marketing. So that trip from Goshen College to Indianapolis, where we lived, and then for 1.5 years, I commuted back and forth to Bloomington while I worked on a master's degree in physical education. At that time, I didn't realize how much it would influence my life, but IU had been like this, I guess schools do this, has this overarching, like, what do we want to do? And so it kept being drilled into us in search of excellence at that time. And being kind of a perfectionist and somebody that wanted to hit 10 out of 10 free throws in every pitch that was ever thrown to me, that resonated with me. But then I kind of realized, well, the dangers, you can't be perfect. Even Ted Williams was only 3 out of 10. So just another thing as I considered in my life, and I think Vince Lombardi, Green Bay Packer coach, I get this right, in our tireless search for perfection on the way we will find excellence. And he did okay. Indianapolis, Indiana to Colorado Springs, Colorado, where Ann was from and took her first job as a clinical physical therapist. I took an internship with the United States Olympic Committee. And yes, I had a graduate degree and I accepted a job for $4 a day. That also included lunch at the Olympic Dining Hall. But I got to meet a lot of people, and it was a good place to be at that time. And when my supervisor said, what do you hope to learn from this experience? I said, I want to be so good that when this is all over, you won't be able to let me go. You'll need to hire me. And that actually happened. So I was an intern from January through April, May, June, and July. I got hired and did coaching education. And then the rest of the year I did event management, doing live events all around the United States with the head of events. So that was a jaunt. Ann was happy to be back home. We went from the Midwest to the Rocky Mountains. I loved it out there. I could play outside all day long, sunshine, and there was sports everywhere. And Bethel Mennonite Church was our home congregation at that time. There was a few Goshen grads there. We had a good, small, young married group. 1990, 19, after I finished my internship, and 2 months later, I got hired by the U.S. Soccer Federation. So in that realm, quickly, you have the United States Olympic Committee, and then every sport has a national governing body that's responsible for that sport and governing that sport. And so I work for the U.S. Soccer Federation, which is in charge of referees, player development, youth soccer, adult soccer, and professional soccer. Soccer was in its infancy at that time. As a Goshen grad, I thought like, I know a little bit about this. Some of my roommates were soccer players, but I had never played the game in my life. So my love was the orange ball, the small ball you hit, and volleyball, team sports. And so I'm like, but I can get into this. So I've been working in soccer since that day to this day. And it truly is an interesting sport and a global unifier that you'll hear more about. So that was a jaunt from Colorado Springs. U.S. Soccer moved its offices to Chicago. I knew about Chicago. It was familiar to me, but it wasn't Colorado. And it was a little bit dark in the beginning because there are no mountains, there's less sunshine, and there's traffic everywhere. And our office was in the city. We were living out in the suburbs. Ann was managing a physical therapy clinic, and we wanted to start a family. Some of the highlights at that time when I was at U.S. Soccer, though, I got to go to Barcelona in 1992 to the Olympics. That's me in the upper right there. I was the team administrator, or in the Olympic world, they call that chef d'équipe. So I was the head of the team administratively. And the ironic thing here is like many of these guys went on to be leaders at the professional soccer clubs. So relationships that I had developed with these guys turned into business later on. And you all heard of the World Cup 94. It's coming back next year. So that was a big thing that I could participate into when I was at U.S. Soccer. Sports make you travel. We enjoy traveling. I had to throw these in there because Ann and I have traveled a lot. I have a lot of frequent flyer miles, and we've used those. And we just enjoy going back to Colorado or going to the tropics somewhere and enjoying the beauty of the world. 1993, I'm in my office in Chicago, and Ann is pregnant. And I always say, like, she knew a little bit too much being a physical therapist. She got a phone call that what's it called? A test of something is higher than normal, and you need to come in for an ultrasound. And she's like, I'm just sure that the child has spina bifida because of this. So we went about 24, 36, 48 hours. She had the ultrasound. I'm sitting in my desk. She calls me. This is before cell phone. She calls my landline. She goes, everything's okay. They're both okay. So this guy goes running around the office. I'm having twins. I'm having twins. I'm having twins. So, but the precursor to that was, and you remember my nieces that grew up in this church, Ingrid and Megan. Megan was the one that told Ann when she was pregnant, Aunt Ann, wouldn't that be so cool if you had twins? Then there would be 3 girl cousins and 3 boy cousins. And so, but yeah, so that was and they were born in Chicago, and we attended Lombard Mennonite Church from the day we moved there until the day we moved away from there. So we lived in the south suburbs, and so it was like a 45-minute effort to go up there to Lombard. No family, like uncles, aunts, grandparents. So our kids developed cousins within the Mennonite church, and to this day, they still feel like cousins. In fact, yesterday we were in Chicago, and they were together, and it's family for us. 1997, age 34, I had the opportunity to start a business, and I thought, And in fact, some of my Goshen friends that study business and finance said, what do you know about business? You never took any business. And I said, but I went to Goshen College. So I got recruited away from that non-for-profit national governing body, US Soccer, to start a business called TGI Systems. I found this gentleman and his wife because they were making stickers for the NHL around the rink. And then they were making the signs that go on the score table in the NBA that used to scroll, if you remember that. They roll. Everything's electronic now. And they were making it was behind home plate. And I said, if you can do that for that sport, we at soccer aspire to have that around a soccer field. But at age 34 with twins at home, right, there was that moment of confusion in my life, like, do I know what I'm doing? So US Soccer 97, Major League Soccer 98, and FIFA in 2002. I put those up there because when I started this company in 97, I knew I had 3 clients. The one that I came from, the one that was starting, and someday in my life, I want to do FIFA. Federation International Football Association. It is the international federation. So that's a good question. Besides every sport having a national governing body, there's also an international. So you have the US Olympic Committee, you have the IOC, you have USA Basketball, you have FIBA, Federation International Basketball, FIFA, FIBA, you have all of these, even equestrian, FEI. All of them have an international government which unites all the member associations to make those World Cups and those World Championships, whatever sport it is, badminton, tennis. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. People ask me that all the time, and it stands for absolutely nothing. The husband and wife that I went into business with had jumping ahead a little bit, had an S Corp, for those of you in the room that know, I didn't even know what that meant. We started an LLC, right? Their company was called TGI Inc., and that stood for Transport Graphics Incorporated. So they were in the printing world, and they started making stickers that went on trucks. Now, the bridge here, bear with me a little bit. My former business partner is outside of the Chicago Stadium before the United Center, and he's putting a sticker on a moving truck. And that moving truck was the sponsor of the indoor soccer team in Chicago. And so the owner of the Blackhawks came out to him and said, if you can put stickers on that truck, can't you put stickers in our arena down by the rink? So when my hockey team, the Blackhawks, play and they're on TV, we get some advertisement and some publicity. And my partner, so before I met him, of course, as an entrepreneur, you go, yeah, we can do that. And then you figure it out later. Now think about this. The ironic thing is, whether it's an airplane up in the air or a truck going down the road, that material that's being stuck on that has been tested in those conditions. Nobody thought to test a sticker on a hockey rink with the ice at 32 degrees. Glue doesn't work at near freezing. But my partner went to 3M in St. Paul and figured out how to make that, and he had the market on that. That's what attracted me to him. And I said, if you can figure out the NHL, you and I can figure out soccer. So for the first time, TGI Systems, we switched the whole soccer world from painting on wood, literally it was painted on wood, those signs you see around a soccer field, and I'll get to one of those, to a print, whether that was traditional screen print or it was a digital print. But coming back to your question, it means nothing. So we just put systems after TGI because we had an advertising system that went around a soccer field. So field board. What is a field board? You ever heard of a field board? John, I'm sure you've heard of a field board. The field board is the advertising message that goes around a soccer field. And that's how you pay for your sponsorship, by giving them that in-game advertisement. So that's what had been painted, which we printed, which is now electronic and motion, and now is also virtual. I'll get to all of that. Sometimes I get way ahead of myself. But I established a business just around a field board. That also happens in hockey. What's my time here? And I get to go to a lot of nice games like the NCAA Final Four. So in 2005, so in 1997, we had that LLC. Husband and wife get divorced. Bank forecloses on their business. I had an LLC. And so I don't know what's going on. The bank shows up. It's like, hey, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I have a contract. It's like, well, are you going to buy the business or what? And so with the help of some friends, we flipped the LLC to an Illinois C Corp. And if you're confused, don't worry about it. I was confused too at the time. But I know like Dell and I don't know, Len, you guys like, give me something that's difficult, right? This happens in business. So now you have shareholders, you have partners, and I had to do a self-assessment, like, is this something that I wanted to do? And my new business partner told me to take this Taylor protocol things, which is, I put this up here, core value index, because I found out that after I did this, I'm a builder and a banker. I wish I didn't known that way back, because that's what fueled my desire to like create this business and work with people in this space. So far, so good. Have I lost you? No questions? I think this is relative to a faith journey. Once I was that business owner, I played college baseball here with Jim Smucker. That's the Bird in Hand Smucker family. Len would remember, and he was a VP at EMU. I think he's in Charm, Ohio now, working with Jim mentored me, and Alan Lefevre, who was here for a while on faculty, and that also mentored me to attend a Mennonite Entrepreneurs Conference. At one of those conferences, it got drilled into me that if you don't know what your core values are, your business could be listless. So I went back home. You know, this is a new C Corp, and I got partners, and none of them are Mennonite, and they have no idea why this is important, but I was able to like make sure that we establish who we were, what our goals were, and that we wanted our people to have these core values. That we, number one, we were a service organization. Because most people in the signage business, here's my product, buy it. To me, it was about how you delivered that and how you treated people. People, relationships, going all the way back to those Olympic days, I kept relationships with people which yielded business. How effectively do you communicate? And those of you that are following the task force report and this congregational transitional journey, communication is so, so important. Intentional communication. The image you wanted to portray yourself, be professional. But yet we were hard workers. And believe me, at 2 a.m. in the United Center, you're wondering, do I really want to work this hard? And then I would get up and go to work the next day in the office. But yet we would always learn and teach our clients, teach our people, teach everybody around us. So evolution of a business, I threw this up here. We went from paint to print. I said this. Then digital print to electronics, which is expensive. Those are the LED digital screens that you see. Electronics to virtual. It's not in the arena. It's only on the TV screen because we know you're watching and it's a message for you. More shareholders, private equity. That's a whole nother Sunday school class sometime, okay? So we went from an LLC to a C Corp, moved to Chicago. And I started with 3 employees in 1997, and today we're more than 500 around the world because of that private equity merging and acquiring other businesses that are related. One thing I wanted to pick up on here is when I started TGI, I wanted to make sure we did US soccer, we did Major League Soccer, and I wanted to do FIFA. And this reckons back to the SST piece, the cross-cultural piece. I knew that I could do FIFA. And so a friend of mine was at FIFA. She gave me the opportunity to go to Switzerland and do a presentation. Lo and behold, when I did my presentation on moving from paint to print, the big boss of FIFA marketing had studied in Wisconsin and did his thesis on 3M. And when I said that, it was like, boom, we made an immediate relationship. So that was the key to our success. But that FIFA contract over 12 years took me to Germany 2006, South Africa 2010, and Brazil in 2014. And the one story I want to tell you, probably because of me in this place and SST and my AIA piece, I took South African workers, laborers, as early as 2011 when 2007, when we knew we were going to be in 9 cities in 2010. Now, these are guys from Soweto. And I said, you're going to go with us to New Zealand. You're going to go with us to Europe. You're going to go with us to Egypt. You're going to go with us to Nigeria because I want you to be in charge in 2010 in your town, in your stadium. And the friendship that created, and in Africa, if you know, like you just make the circle bigger. It was incredible. And to this day, I still talk to these guys in Cape Town, Joburg. Yeah, it was a powerful experience for me. I put this up here because from the paint to print, from the print to electronics, this is an electronic sign, so you can see it changes, right? But that means money. Each and every one of these systems costs about $1 million. And when you got to get like 20 of these things out there, that's beyond my capacity. So you start dealing with banks, you start dealing with other shareholders, investors, and so forth and so on. That complicates things. Another moment of confusion. Do you stay in control or do you lose control? In 2014 and 2015, I had kind of achieved the 3 pieces I wanted, the US soccer, the MLS, and the FIFA piece. And so where else could I go? So we started TGI Europe. We started TGI South America. And then we took on private equity. And to this day, we have separate entities that I started in those places, 15, 18 years ago. So that moment of confusion ended up okay. The nice thing, everybody, in the Mennonite world, when you own a business or a business owner, they're like, oh, you're going to give it to your kids. It's like, no, this isn't like that, right? But I have had the opportunity to work with my son. He's 31, going to be 32 now, and he has my original accounts, lives in Chicago. We were with him yesterday. And our daughter, married, lives in Boston, also had the opportunity to work in 2016 in the hospitality sector at Soldier Field when we did the Copa America Centenario. And I learned a little Spanish along the way, so it can be a little bit dangerous. Again, the evolution of a business, what I like to say is under promise, but over deliver. I think that's a tenet. You don't have time to do it right the first time. When are you going to find the time to do it over? I think it's just good. A good salesman sells himself, but a great salesman sells the company. Not like outright sells the company, but talks about everybody. This is one we have to talk about in sports. Are you playing for the front of the shirt, which is where your team's logo is, or are you playing for the back of the shirt where your name is? I like to play for the front of the shirt, if you can't tell. And my dad would always say, if you're not making waves, you're not underway. So he'd say, it's okay to be the middle of a washing machine occasionally, the agitator. And I would also talk about the ability to look around corners and anticipate what's coming next and bring everybody along with you in your business on that journey, because it's scary sometimes. I wanted to throw these up here because recognize some of these books. Len, I know you, yeah. I learned a lot. One of my business partners gave me the E-Myth and why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it. You can start a business and then keep it small, but can you expand it? Can you manage it? And then can you replicate it? It's so hard to replicate. So, and I threw up Blue Ocean strategy up there too, because that's really what some of my success was, is like I was always out ahead of everybody, anticipating what's going to be next to try and drag the customer there to stay away from competition. I like to throw these up there. You can read it if you can read them. Futility. You always miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And statistically speaking, 99% of the shots you do. So you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Failure. when your best just isn't good enough. Many times in my journey, I thought I put my best thing out there and we just failed. And you learn. We call those successful failures. I like this, and I would always tell my workers this one: if we don't take care of the customer, maybe they'll quit bugging us. Everybody always talks about, oh, that person is a pain, and well, just don't call them anymore. They'll leave you alone. This is another one. I'll end with this. This is the newest technology, and I talk about failure. It doesn't always work right. So on the left there, those little triangles are Adidas logos. Those are not in the stadium. Those are only on TV. And occasionally you don't get your AI working right and it shows up on top of the player instead of behind the player. Just a couple of other things here. So we were at Lombard Mennonite Church, 1992 to 2018. And I did board work at AMBS. I worked with Rebecca Slough, so I think that's why she did one of these to recruit me over here. That was good work that I did at AMBS. The transition from Sarah to David over there was especially rewarding. And I was also on the META board, and I know you all know about META, I think. I did want to say there's on the 15th, I think it's, or the 19th, Friday the 19th, there's a META Michiana meeting too. I don't know if you're all aware of that. The people that are speaking there spoke at convention last year. It's a great talk if you want to learn more about META. But what resonated with me when I was on the META board was business solutions to poverty. And Ann and I got to go, several trips around the world to see what the good work that META does. And again, family and travel. Ann and I had the opportunity to do a project in Jordan, a soccer project, and then META had a project in the Jordan Valley too that we got to go there. So you'll often find us at a game, and that's kind of the travel we do in and around. Son-in-law couple 3-4 years ago, married right here, Joe Brenneman, St. Mary's, Ohio. Kate and Joe met here when Kate was finishing her doctorate at Notre Dame. Joe is a high school algebra teacher. They now live in Boston. And it was kind of interesting. He was a Huntington grad, and he actually played soccer against Chris when Chris played here at Goshen. And then was that 7 years later, whatever, we have him as a son-in-law. And then, you know, my in-laws, Ann's parents, they're now over at Greencroft. So, and then we still enjoy fishing in our adult lives, my son. And then there's my mom with all of her grandkids. And then, yeah, Ann and I at College Mennonite Church blessing our dog Daisy last fall. So I can stop. Well, there's 2 minutes left. I wasn't going to show you that. I was going to show you a video yet, but questions about that. I mean, it's a lot. It's fast. It's furious. I can bring the microphone to you if you want. No questions. That's the best thing. No questions. Fanny.
I don't know very little about sports, almost nothing. And I don't know anything about business either. So I wonder why and how you know that you're successful with just having these virtual advertisements that we see if we're watching TV. But I never ever look at those things. Well, I hardly ever watch any sports, but when I do, I never look at those things around the rink. So I just don't quite understand. I know it works.
Okay, I think that was an affirmation instead of a question. Actually, I didn't get to it, but the thing they say beyond that, you all have done Amazon, right? And you know when you browse someplace, then you find yourself later on looking at Amazon, all of a sudden it pops up over here, what you just looked at. So in the sporting world, when you start watching sports, could be the US Open, could be a golf event, and you watch it on your smartphone because you're logged in and it has your IP address, those virtual ads could get linked to what you're interested in buying. So granddaughter, son, you in the same house, logged in 3 different ways, might get 3 different ads. So I don't know. That doesn't scare me. Maybe that scares some people. Questions? Irvin.
Are you still fully involved in the business, or have you retired, or are just the supervisor of it, or what? Here in Goshen. I can understand Chicago, but here in Goshen.
Yeah, about when private equity came in, and so you have 88% of the company is owned by an Australian private equity and a US private equity. And so then to pull all these 500 people together around the world, they hired a global management team. So they leave me alone. And everything that we do on a day-to-day basis, we're probably about a quarter of the earnings, 20 to $30 million is what our entity is of the whole entity. The day-to-day stuff I have nothing to do with. I try to go out and say, 3 years from now, what's going to happen in Mexico when the television rights change? And where do we need to put our company so that the broadcasters can continue to communicate with the 50 million Mexicans in the United States that are watching those games on Saturday night? So strategical things, pontificate way out there, and occasionally sign a contract, but not supervising buying supplies anymore or overlooking travel, things like that I used to do.
Is Jesus a Mennonite sports fan?
Is Jesus a Mennonite sports fan? Any Monty Python fans in the room? Did you ever see this Monty Python soccer game? Who's in goal? Jesus. Jesus saves. No, I'm pretty sure that Bib Lit, Stanley Shank, is coming back to me right now. David danced on the court. He was a basketball player, right? Can't we make that? Questions?
Could you say something about your competition and how you deal with it or how you compete?
Yeah, the differentiator there would be I would go back to service that I talked about. Like we often find competition as the local producer making a sign for that team in that city in exchange for tickets. And when people have told me, hey, can you make ours and we'll give you, like, I can't feed 30 people. So you have that competitor. Another thing I would always say is like, I might not be the fastest or the quickest, but nobody should ever outthink us. Right. And so that goes to anticipating what your client might need before they even realize it's a need. So if somebody tries to compete with us on a service level, we're so far out in front of them. But yeah, in the other thing I'll say in that space is I have run into, and sports can be very nefarious, people trying to bribe other people, and I've just stayed away from that because that happens in sports. How does somebody go from a 9 million offer to a 6 million offer? You just lost all your profit or something. So integrity, yeah. Yeah. I know you probably all have, and it's 11:04. I'm not trying to say let's finish, but it is a lot. Yes.
I thought it was the aha moment for me today when you said that what the people in the stadium see is different than what I see. Now, I think that that's a good example of our sermon this morning. See, we read the story, and if you see it literally, then you don't see what she said to us about that story. And so you're illustrating with your business what we are struggling with as a denomination. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, thank you. Um, often when I try to talk to clients about the adaptation of new technologies to provide that more concise message to the person that it's engaging, they get lost in that. And I said, this is the cross-cultural piece, and maybe you'll realize this, that Coca-Cola Red is known throughout the whole world. But believe it or not, in Brazil, they use that Brazilian sweetener. And so Brazilians think of Coke in green. So I think back to kind of what you said is like how you package something and has to connect with the person. Right. And that's what I think going back to I think we do that better than my competitors do. Making sure that the person in the stadium is having a different experience than the person at home. Maybe here, you all were here today in there, and there's a lot of people watching on channel 13, and that's a different experience. Boxcast is a different experience. How do we bring that together is what our challenge is, because we're all one church together.
I have a child on the second floor of my building. That's on that different television. They see a different thing that I'm seeing down at the valley.
Possibly could head that way. Because, our brains, if you see something that's a juvenile brand, you're just going to shut it out. You don't, I mean, there's things I see, and we were at a game last night. There's things going on. It's like, wow, I don't understand that. They're not targeting a 62-year-old white male. Or how many people watch, the Cubs or whatever, and occasionally you'll see a foreign language around there? Me? No. No, it just happens. I went to Goshen College, remember? I'm a little bit smarter than the average bear. Just a little bit. But look around corners.
Okay, you were a little boy in Leo, Indiana, and now you're hobnobbing with the power elite. How does it feel?
No, I'll answer that when I used to be on the airplane and the flight attendants would come back and say, "Sir, you realize you're in an exit row, and in the event of emergency," I said, "You want me here." I said, "Have you looked around? Look at me." I said, "You want me opening that door. You don't want that guy over there opening that door." So to your question, I want to be there. I want to have a voice in those spaces, right? And I mean, I don't really get into it, but I've met the first Bush. I met Fidel Castro. I've met they're just normal people to me, right? Or maybe they're going, "Oh, hey, I met Pat Fenderly." I don't know. But yeah, it's incomprehensible to me to go from my high school class was 108, right? My kids went to, what was it, Ann? 2000 in the suburbs of Chicago. So believe it or not, I have another service to attend and a interim pastor to introduce to another congregation. And I'm not saying I want to quit, but I'll be mindful of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I think we all learned a lot today. Whether we remember it is another. Thank you.